Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to speak from my heart and lift up a prayer for each and every one of you. You are not just my audience, you are my family. Your love, support, and kindness mean everything to me, and I pray that life rewards you with endless joy, peace, and strength. Dear Heavenly Father, with humble hearts, we come before you today, grateful for this beautiful family you have brought together. Lord, I ask that you pour out your love and blessings upon each one of them. Fill their hearts with peace, their minds with wisdom, and their lives with unshakable joy. Protect them from any harm, comfort them in times of pain, and guide them through every storm they face. Lord, I also lift up Binta into your loving hands. She is a strong, beautiful soul, and I pray that you surround her with your healing power. Give her the strength to overcome, the peace to rest, and the faith to know she is never alone. Let her feel the love and prayers of this wonderful family standing beside her. Thank you, Lord, for the love that unites us. Let us continue to shine light into the world, lifting each other up with kindness, compassion, and unwavering support. Amen. My beautiful family, how was the last story? Did it touch your heart? If you love what I do, type yes in the comments. Your support means everything to me, and I cherish each and every one of you. Binta is not feeling well right now, so please keep her in your prayers. Your love and support mean the world to us, and we are so grateful for this incredible family. And tell me, have you shared these stories with your loved ones? Let's continue to grow together, spreading love and passion through every story we share. Now, let's begin. With love. The setting sun painted Chicago's glass towers in hues of amber and gold, casting long shadows across Allen & Koss's corner office on the 42nd floor. His fingers traced invisible patterns on the temperature-controlled glass as he watched the city transition from its daytime bustle to its evening glamour. At 35, he had built Koss Technologies into a billion-dollar empire, but success felt hollow in the quietest moments like these. The desk behind him held the latest prototype of their revolutionary quantum computing chip, a project that would revolutionize the tech industry once again. Yet his mind wandered to the locked drawer in his credenza, where a small velvet box had gathered dust for 5 years. Inside lay the engagement ring he'd chosen for Victoria Blackwood, the woman who had shattered not just his heart, but his entire sense of self-worth. "Mr. Koss," his assistant's voice came through the intercom, interrupting his brooding. "The board meeting minutes have been prepared for your review, and Dr. Reynolds called about the fertility clinic's annual fundraiser next month. They're hoping you'll consider being a major donor again this year." Allen's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll have my foundation send the usual amount. No need for me to attend." The words came out harder than he intended, and he immediately regretted his tone. Madison had been his assistant for 3 years. She didn't deserve his sharp edges. "Of course, sir." Her voice remained professionally neutral, but he could hear the concern she tried to hide. Everyone in his inner circle walked on eggshells when it came to certain topics, and anything related to children or families topped that list. He turned from the window and sank into his ergonomic chair, the Italian leather creaking softly beneath him. The office, like everything else in his life, was meticulously designed. All clean lines and modern efficiency, with just enough artistic touches to avoid feeling sterile. The abstract paintings on the walls, chosen by the interior designer, were meant to inspire creativity and innovation. Tonight, they only reminded him of empty spaces waiting to be filled. Running his hands through his dark hair, still thick despite the stress of recent years, Allen pulled up the evening's email reports. The European markets had closed strong, and their new AI division was exceeding quarterly projections. He should have felt satisfied, triumphant even. Instead, the success felt like another layer of armor he'd built around himself, protecting him from the whispers that had followed Victoria's very public rejection. The memory surfaced unbidden, as sharp and clear as the day it happened. The garden party at her parents' Lake Forest estate, where Chicago's elite had gathered to celebrate their engagement. Victoria, resplendent in a pale blue dress that matched her eyes, had too much champagne and began talking to her society friends. He'd approached just in time to hear her laughing voice carry across the manicured lawn. "Can you imagine? All that money and he can't even give me children. What's the point of marrying into the Koss fortune if I can't produce an heir? The doctors say he's practically sterile, something about low motility and count. He offered to try fertility treatments, as if I want to spend years jabbing myself with needles just to maybe have one sickly baby." The words had cut deeper than any business rival's attack ever could. The test results had been private, shared only with Victoria after she'd pressed him about starting a family immediately after marriage. He'd trusted her with his vulnerability, and she'd turned it into cocktail party gossip. The story spread through Chicago's upper echelons like wildfire. Whispers followed him at charity galas, board meetings and social clubs. Poor Alan and Koss, all that money can't buy him what matters most. Some looked at him with pity, others with barely concealed derision. The great Koss bloodline, ending with a defective heir. He'd thrown himself into work after that, expanding Koss Technologies from a successful regional player into a global powerhouse. Every acquisition, every innovation, every triumph was a shield against the pitying looks and whispered conversations that fell silent when he entered a room. 5 years of 60-hour weeks and strategic isolation had built an empire, but left him alone in his glass tower. Madison's voice came through the intercom again. "Sir, Mr. Chen from the Singapore office is online too. He says it's urgent. Something about the semiconductor supply chain." Allanan straightened in his chair, grateful for the interruption. Put him through. Business problems he could solve. Business problems didn't leave him feeling hollow and inadequate. But as he discussed microchip specifications and production timelines, his eyes kept drifting to the Chicago skyline. The sun had fully set now, and millions of lights twinkled in the darkness like stars brought down to earth. Somewhere out there, families were sitting down to dinner. Children were being tucked into bed. Lovers were meeting for late drinks or walks along the lake. Real life was happening beyond these glass walls, beyond the protective fortress he'd built around himself. The call ended, and Allanan found himself opening his laptop's browser. The fertility clinic's website was still in his bookmarks, though he hadn't visited it in years. New treatments were being developed all the time, promising better success rates and less invasive procedures. He'd kept track from a distance, making anonymous donations to research programs while telling himself it was purely philanthropic. A knock at his door made him quickly close the browser. "Come in." Madison entered, holding a thick manila envelope. "The final contract for the Museum of Contemporary Art Gala sponsorship needs your signature. They're featuring several emerging artists this year, focusing on technological themes in modern art. The curator specifically requested Koss Technologies as the primary sponsor." "The usual terms?" He reached for the papers, grateful for another distraction. "Actually, they've proposed something different this year. The new curator wants to create an interactive exhibition combining art and technology. She thinks our quantum computing research could be part of the installation." Madison hesitated. "She'd like to meet with you personally to discuss the vision." Allanan's pen paused above the signature line. "Since when do we meet with museum curators? That's what the PR department is for." Ms. Grace is apparently quite persuasive. She has an impressive background in both fine arts and computer science. The board thinks her vision for combining the two could be excellent publicity for our quantum computing initiative. Madison's tone was carefully neutral, but there was something in her expression that made him suspicious. You've already met her, haven't you? A slight smile crossed Madison's face. She came by the office last week while you were in Tokyo. She's not what you'd expect from a museum curator. I think you might actually enjoy the meeting. Allanan signed the contract with perhaps more force than necessary. Fine, one meeting next week. But make it clear this is about the exhibition, nothing else. And Madison? He fixed her with a stern look. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. His assistant's smile widened slightly. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Mr. Koss. I'll set up the meeting for Tuesday morning. Will there be anything else? He waved her away, trying to ignore the knowing look in her eyes. Madison had been trying to subtly introduce him to eligible women for the past 2 years, always under the guise of business meetings or charity events. He dodged every attempt, but something about her expression tonight made him wonder if this time might be different. Alone again, Allanan stood and walked back to the window. The city stretched out before him, a glittering tapestry of possibilities. For the first time in years, he felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. Or perhaps it was just indigestion from skipping dinner again. Either way, Tuesday suddenly seemed very far away. The night deepened around his office, but Allanan remained at the window, lost in thoughts of what might have been and what might still be. Behind him, the prototype quantum chip continued its calculations, processing millions of possibilities in parallel universes. In one of those universes, perhaps, another version of himself hadn't let fear and pain build walls quite so high. Perhaps that version knew what it meant to be truly happy, truly whole. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, closing his eyes against the city lights. Tuesday. One meeting, nothing more. He could handle that. After all, he was Allanan Koss, the man who had built an empire out of silicon and dreams. What was one meeting with a museum curator compared to that? But as he finally gathered his things to leave the office, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that perhaps this time something would be different. Perhaps this time the walls he'd built so carefully might begin to crack, letting in the light he'd been keeping out for so long. The security guard nodded as he passed through the lobby, his footsteps echoing in the marble expanse. Outside, his driver waited with the car, ready to take him back to his penthouse apartment. Another night alone, another evening of work and whiskey and wondering what might have been. But Tuesday was coming, and with it, though he didn't know it yet, would come the woman who would change everything. Lucy Grace, with her brilliant mind and gentle heart, would soon walk into his carefully ordered world and turn it completely upside down. The walls he'd built would begin to crumble, and in their place would grow something beautiful and unexpected. A love story that would prove that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as our deepest wounds. For now, though, Allanan Koss simply rode home in silence, watching the city lights blur past his window, unaware that his life was about to change forever. The quantum chip in his office continued its calculations, processing countless possibilities, including the one that was about to become his reality. In just a few days, the shadows of his past would begin to fade in the light of a future he never dared to imagine. Chapter 2. A Chance Encounter. The Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art glowed like a jewel against the autumn evening sky. Through its vast glass facades, the warm light of the gala celebrations spilled onto the plaza, where the city's elite arrived in a steady stream of luxury vehicles and designer evening wear. Allanan Koss adjusted his bow tie as he stepped out of his Bentley, nodding to the valet who rushed forward to take his keys. The invitation had sat on his desk for weeks, ignored until Madison practically forced him to RSVP. "Your foundation is the leading donor," she'd reminded him, "and the new quantum computing exhibition is directly tied to our technology. You need to be there." What she hadn't mentioned was the way she'd smiled when she said it, that same knowing look she'd worn when discussing the mysterious Miss Grace. Inside, the museum's modernist architecture created a cathedral-like space filled with the gentle murmur of conversation and the soft strains of a string quartet. Crystal champagne flutes clinked, jewelry sparkled, and the sharp suits and flowing gowns of Chicago's wealthy formed their own kind of living art installation. Al-Anon accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, using it more as a prop than a drink. Al-Anon Kos, As I Live and Breathe. The booming voice belonged to Richard Sterling, chairman of the museum's board of trustees. The man himself finally graces us with his presence. Come, come, you must meet our new curator. She's an absolute revelation. Before Al-Anon could formulate an excuse, Sterling's meaty hand was on his shoulder, steering him through the crowd. They passed exhibits that merged traditional art forms with cutting-edge technology, holographic sculptures that shifted and changed as viewers walked around them, interactive paintings that responded to human touch, and one particularly striking installation that seemed to capture and reshape light itself. Fascinating, isn't it? Sterling gestured at the light sculpture. Miss Grace's vision is transforming this place. She understands that the future of art lies at the intersection of creativity and technology. Rather like your own work, wouldn't you say? Al-Anon murmured something non-committal, but found his interest genuinely piqued by the exhibitions. Each piece seemed carefully chosen to challenge the boundary between human expression and technological innovation. It was thoughtful, provocative work, far from the pretentious installations he'd expected. They found Lucy Grace in the center of the main gallery, speaking animatedly with a small group of patrons. She wore a deep purple gown that complemented her rich brown skin, the fabric flowing like liquid silk as she gestured to emphasize a point. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, with a few carefully placed curls framing her face. But it was her eyes that caught Al-Anon's attention. Bright with intelligence and enthusiasm, they seemed to dance as she spoke about the artwork. "Miss Grace," Sterling called out, "allow me to introduce our principal benefactor, Al-Anon Kos." She turned, and Al-Anon felt something shift in the air between them. Her smile, when it came, was genuine and warm, lacking the calculated charm he'd grown used to seeing at such events. "Mr. Kos," she extended her hand, "I've been looking forward to meeting you. Your work in quantum computing is revolutionary. I have so many ideas about how we could incorporate it into future exhibitions." Her handshake was firm, professional, but there was an undeniable spark of electricity when their hands met. Al-Anon found himself holding on a fraction longer than necessary, captured by the intensity of her gaze. "Please call me Al-Anon." The words surprised him even as he spoke them. He rarely invited such familiarity, especially at first meetings. "Your integration of technology into these pieces is unexpected, in a good way." Lucy's smile widened. "That's exactly what I'm aiming for, the unexpected. Art should challenge our preconceptions, don't you think? Even better if it can educate while it entertains." She gestured to the light sculpture. "This piece, for instance, uses algorithms based on quantum mechanics to create patterns that never exactly repeat. It's a metaphor for the unpredictability of human experience rendered through pure technology." Sterling, sensing the connection forming, made a show of spotting someone across the room. "Oh, I must speak with the mayor. Please, continue your discussion. Ms. Grace, perhaps you could show Mr. Kos the special installation we're planning for the quantum computing exhibit." As Sterling disappeared into the crowd, Lucy's professional smile softened into something more genuine. "Would you like to see it? It's still in development, but I think you'll find it interesting." Al-Anon found himself nodding, intrigued despite his usual reservations. Lucy led him through a door marked "Staff Only," and down a corridor lined with carefully wrapped artworks. waiting to be installed. Her heels clicked softly on the polished concrete floor, the sound echoing in the private space. "I should warn you," she said over her shoulder, "it's still quite rough. But I believe in sharing the creative process, not just the final result. Sometimes the journey is as interesting as the destination." They entered a large workshop space where various technical equipment shared space with more traditional artistic tools. In the center stood a structure that seemed to be made of light and shadow, continuously shifting and reforming. "It responds to brainwave patterns," Lucy explained, picking up what looked like a delicate silver headband. "The quantum algorithms interpret the electrical signals and translate them into visual poetry. Here, try it." Before his usual walls could go up, she was fitting the band around his head, her fingers brushing lightly against his temples. The touch sent shivers down his spine, and suddenly the light sculpture erupted in a cascade of blue and gold, the patterns swirling and pulsing with unprecedented intensity. "Remarkable," Lucy breathed, standing close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and spicy, with notes of vanilla and amber. "Your emotional responses are incredibly strong. The patterns, I've never seen anything quite like this." Al-Anon watched the dancing lights, acutely aware of her presence beside him. The sculpture seemed to be responding to both of them now, creating intricate patterns that spoke of possibility and connection. "It's beautiful," he said softly, and he wasn't sure if he meant the artwork or the way the lights played across her face, highlighting the gentle curve of her cheek and the warmth in her eyes. "Beauty often comes from unexpected places," she replied, turning to face him. "Sometimes we have to let go of our preconceptions to see what's really there." Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The quantum light sculpture pulsed with gentle colors, as if reflecting the tentative connection forming between them. The spell was broken by the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Lucy stepped back, smoothly removing the headband as a security guard appeared in the doorway. "Miss Grace, Dr. Silva is looking for you. Something about the interactive children's exhibit for next month?" "Thank you, James. I'll be right there." She turned back to Al-Anon with a slight smile. "Duty calls. But I hope we can continue this discussion soon, perhaps over coffee. I'd love to hear your thoughts on incorporating more of COS Technology's innovations into our educational programs." Al-Anon found himself agreeing before his usual defenses could kick in. They exchanged business cards. Hers was elegant and understated, with a subtle texture that suggested handmade paper, and made arrangements to meet the following week. As he watched her walk away, Al-Anon realized his heart was beating faster than usual. The quantum sculpture behind him had settled into a gentle, pulsing rhythm, as if it too was coming down from an unexpected emotional high. Back in the main gallery, the gala continued in full swing, but it all seemed slightly less important now. Al-Anon moved through the crowds with renewed purpose, his mind already turning to the possibility of coffee with Lucy Grace. He caught glimpses of her throughout the evening, commanding attention during her speech about the museum's future vision, laughing with a group of young artists, deep in serious discussion with a woman he would later learn was Dr. Brielle Silva. Each time she seemed to sense his gaze, meeting his eyes briefly across the room with a smile that made his chest tighten. As his driver brought the car around at the end of the evening, Al-Anon found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, hoping. Her business card seemed to burn in his pocket, a promise of something new and unexpected. The quantum sculpture's patterns danced in his memory, a visual representation of the connection he'd felt. The city lights blurred past his window as they drove through the night, but for once, Al-Anon wasn't thinking about work or the past. Instead, His mind was filled with the way Lucy's eyes had lit up when she talked about art and technology, the gentle touch of her fingers against his temples, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the walls he'd built weren't as impenetrable as he'd thought. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a message. "Thank you for coming tonight," Lucy had written. "I'm looking forward to our coffee meeting. Art has a way of bringing people together in unexpected ways." Alanon smiled, something tight in his chest loosening for the first time in years. The quantum sculpture had shown him something tonight, that beauty could emerge from chaos, that patterns could shift and change, and that sometimes the most remarkable connections came when you least expected them. As his car turned toward home, the city seemed different somehow, full of possibility rather than shadows. Tuesday's coffee meeting couldn't come soon enough, and for once, Alanon Kos was ready to embrace the unexpected. Chapter 3. Breaking Down. Walls. Dr. Brielle Silva stood at the window of her pediatric office, watching the autumn leaves dance across the hospital courtyard. A smile played on her lips as she recalled the electric moment she'd witnessed between her best friend Lucy and the enigmatic Alanon Kos at the museum gala. As Chicago's most sought-after pediatrician, she'd developed a keen eye for reading people, and what she'd seen that night had sparked an idea. She picked up her phone and typed out a quick message to Lucy. "Lunch at Mariposa. Need your brilliant mind on a children's art therapy program." It wasn't entirely a lie. She had been considering such a program. The fact that Mariposa was directly across from Kos Technologies' headquarters was simply serendipitous. Lucy's response came quickly. 1 p.m. Just finished installing the new quantum light exhibition. Brielle's smile widened. Perfect timing. She knew from her hospital board connections that Alanon Kos typically took his lunch meeting at Mariposa around that time. Sometimes fate needed a little nudge from a friend. The upscale restaurant was busy when Lucy arrived, her curator's eye automatically taking in the elegant decor and the play of light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Brielle had chosen a table with a clear view of the entrance, and she couldn't help but notice how Lucy's gaze kept drifting to the glass doors of Kos Technologies across the street. "So," Brielle began, settling into her chair, "tell me everything about the gala that you conveniently forgot to mention during our brief conversation that night." Lucy busied herself with her water glass, but couldn't hide the slight flush that colored her cheeks. "There's nothing to tell. Mr. Kos was interested in the quantum computing exhibition. We're meeting for coffee next week to discuss potential collaborations." "Mr. Kos?" Brielle raised an eyebrow. "The same man I saw you disappearing into the restricted area with. The one who couldn't take his eyes off you during your speech." "Alanon," Lucy corrected automatically, then caught herself as Brielle's grin widened. "Dr. Silva, are you playing matchmaker?" "Me? I'm simply a concerned pediatrician who thinks the museum's new interactive children's exhibits could benefit from some corporate sponsorship." Brielle's dark eyes sparkled with mischief. "The fact that a said sponsor happens to be tall, successful, and clearly smitten with you is purely coincidental." Lucy was about to respond when the restaurant's door opened and Alanon Kos himself walked in. He moved with the confident grace of someone used to commanding attention, but there was something almost vulnerable in the way he hesitated when he spotted Lucy. Brielle didn't miss the way Lucy's breath caught or how Alanon's usually stern expression softened. "Mr. Kos," she called out, ignoring Lucy's whispered protest. "What a delightful coincidence. Would you care to join us? We were just discussing the children's wing at the museum." Alanon approached their table, his eyes never leaving Lucy's face. "Dr. Silva, Ms. Grace, I wouldn't want to intrude on your lunch. Please," Brielle gestured to an empty chair. Intrude away. Lucy was just telling me about your fascinating discussion regarding quantum computing in art. As someone who works with children, I'd love to hear how we might make such complex concepts accessible to young minds. The hesitation in Allen's stance lasted only a moment before he sat down, careful to maintain a professional distance from Lucy despite the obvious pull between them. The quantum light sculpture Miss Grace designed is remarkably intuitive. Even without understanding the underlying principles, viewers can't help but respond to it emotionally. Lucy, she corrected softly. Please, call me Lucy. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. Brielle watched as they fell into an animated discussion about art, technology, and education, their initial awkwardness melting away. She noticed how they unconsciously mirrored each other's movements, how their hands would brush accidentally when reaching for the water pitcher, how their eyes kept meeting and holding for just a moment too long. As their impromptu lunch progressed, Brielle masterfully steered the conversation toward her real agenda. You know, the hospital's annual autumn festival is this weekend. We're setting up interactive art stations for the children in the pediatric ward. Lucy's volunteered to help, but we could always use more hands. The invitation hung in the air. Allen's fingers tightened slightly on his water glass, and Brielle could see the internal struggle play across his face. She knew his history, most of Chicago's medical community did, but she also saw how he looked at Lucy, as if she represented everything he'd denied himself for the past 5 years. He began, then glanced at Lucy, who was carefully studying her salad. What time does it start? The smile that bloomed on Lucy's face was worth all of Brielle's careful plotting. 10 a.m., she answered quickly. I could show you around, introduce you to some of the kids. They're amazing artists, you know, so uninhibited in their creativity. I'd like that, Allen said softly, and Brielle could see another brick in his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. The rest of lunch passed in a blur of easy conversation and lingering glances. When Allen finally had to leave for a board meeting, he hesitated before standing. Lucy. About coffee next week. Perhaps we could make it dinner instead. The hope in his voice was unmistakable, and Lucy's answer came without hesitation. I'd love that. After he left, Lucy turned to Brielle with a mixture of exasperation and affection. You planned this, didn't you? I have no idea what you're talking about, Brielle replied innocently, signaling for the check. But you might want to wear that blue dress you bought last month to dinner. It brings out the warmth in your eyes. Later that evening, in her office at the hospital, Brielle received 2 text messages within minutes of each other. From Lucy, thank you, even if you are impossibly meddlesome. From an unknown number, Dr. Silver. Your contact information was in the hospital directory. I just wanted to say thank you for lunch, for everything. Allen and Koss. Brielle smiled as she added his number to her contacts. Sometimes the best medicine wasn't found in any medical textbook. Sometimes it was found in the way 2 people looked at each other when they thought no one was watching, in the gentle breaking down of walls that had been built too high, in the careful orchestration of chance encounters that could lead to something beautiful. The autumn sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of hope. In her office at the museum, Lucy was probably still smiling as she worked on the children's exhibition. In his tower of glass and steel, Allen was possibly, for the first time in years, looking forward rather than back. And Dr. Brielle Silver, matchmaker extraordinaire, began planning her next strategic move. The hospital's autumn festival was just the beginning. These 2 souls, both brilliant in their own ways, both carrying their own kinds of pain, needed each other more than they knew. Sometimes healing came in unexpected forms, and sometimes love needed a friend's gentle push to help it along. She pulled up the festival planning documents on her computer, already envisioning how to create the perfect moments for Lucy and Alanon to grow closer. The children's art stations would need careful arrangement, the timing of activities would need to be just right, and perhaps a few well-timed interruptions from her would help them find moments of privacy amid the chaos of the event. Because Brielle had seen something in both of them, a longing for connection, a desire to break free from the patterns of the past, and most importantly, the potential for a love story that could heal them both. As a doctor, her job was to help people heal, and sometimes that healing came in the form of a carefully orchestrated lunch, a festival invitation, and the gentle nudge toward a future filled with possibilities. The city lights began to twinkle as night fell, and somewhere in Chicago, two people were thinking about each other, wondering what the weekend would bring, and feeling, perhaps for the first time in a long time, that something wonderful was about to begin. Chapter 4. Whispered Confessions. The Southside Gallery was a converted warehouse, its brick walls and exposed beams creating an atmosphere worlds away from the sleek modernity of the Museum of Contemporary Art. Lucy Grace stood in the entrance, adjusting a young artist's canvas, while her heart raced with anticipation. She'd suggested this venue for their first real date, wanting Alanon to see this other side of her world, the raw, authentic heart of Chicago's art scene. She'd dressed carefully, choosing a flowing emerald green dress that complemented her skin tone without feeling too formal for the gallery setting. Her natural curls were styled in a cascade of soft coils, and she wore the simple gold necklace her mother had given her for graduation. The familiar weight of it helped calm her nerves as she heard the distinctive sound of a luxury car pulling up outside. Alanon Koss stepped through the door, and Lucy's breath caught. He'd adapted to the venue's casual atmosphere, wearing dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that made him look more approachable than his usual corporate armor. He carried a single red rose, its deep crimson petals a stark contrast to the industrial setting. "I hope this isn't too cliché," he said, offering her the flower with a slightly self-conscious smile. "I wanted to bring something beautiful, but everything else seemed inadequate compared to the art you're surrounded by." Lucy took the rose, inhaling its delicate fragrance. "It's perfect. Sometimes the simplest gestures are the most meaningful." She tucked the flower into a tall glass of water she'd prepared, having hoped he might bring something like this. "Ready to meet my other family?" Alanon's eyebrow raised questioningly, and Lucy gestured to the teenagers gathering in the gallery's main space. "These are my students. Every Saturday we provide space, materials, and mentoring to young artists from the neighborhood. They're brilliant, passionate, and completely unafraid to tell you exactly what they think." As if on cue, a young girl with vibrant blue braids bounded up to them. "Ms. Grace, is this him? The tech guy you've been talking about?" Lucy felt her cheeks warm. "Destiny, this is Mr. Koss. Alanon, meet Destiny Washington, our resident digital art prodigy." "Just Alanon, please," he said, extending his hand to the teenager. "Ms. Grace tells me you're doing interesting things with AI-generated art?" Destiny's face lit up. "Want to see? I'm combining traditional painting with neural networks to create pieces that change based on the viewer's emotional state, kind of like your quantum thing at the big museum, but more—" She waved her hands expressively. "Raw." Lucy watched as Alanon allowed himself to be pulled toward Destiny's workspace, genuinely engaging with the young artist's enthusiasm. His usual reserved demeanor softened as he asked thoughtful questions and offered suggestions about incorporating more advanced algorithms into her work. They moved through the gallery, meeting more students. Each young artist had a unique story, a distinct vision, and Lucy felt her heart swell watching Alanon connect with them. He didn't talk down to them or dismiss their ideas. Instead, he listened intently, offering encouragement and practical advice about both art and technology. "They're amazing," he said softly, as they paused near a window overlooking the city. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, casting a warm glow over the gallery. "You've created something special here." Lucy leaned against the windowsill, her shoulder brushing against his. "They created it themselves. I just provided the space and belief in their potential. Sometimes that's all people need, someone to see the possibility in them." Their eyes met, and Lucy saw something vulnerable flash across Alanon's face. Before he could retreat behind his usual walls, she gently touched his hand. "Walk with me? There's a place I'd like to show you." They said goodbye to the students and stepped out into the early evening air. The neighborhood was coming alive with weekend energy, music spilling from open windows, children playing in front of brownstones, the smell of home-cooked meals wafting from nearby restaurants. Lucy led them down tree-lined streets, past community gardens and vibrant murals, until they reached Navy Pier. The tourist crowds were thinning as night approached, leaving the waterfront relatively peaceful. They found a quiet spot overlooking the lake, where the city lights danced on the dark water. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," Lucy said, leaning on the railing. "There's something about the way the city meets the water. Two different worlds, finding harmony together." Alanon stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, their arms touching lightly. "Like art and technology," he suggested, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Like any two things that might seem opposed at first glance, but actually complement each other perfectly." Lucy turned to face him, gathering her courage. "Alanon, I know about Victoria Blackwood." She felt him tense beside her, but she pressed on gently. "Chicago's art world runs on gossip as much as the business world does. But I want you to know that whatever she said, whatever happened, it doesn't define who you are." The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of waves lapping against the pier. Finally, Alanon spoke, his voice low and rough with emotion. "I trusted her. With everything, my hopes, my fears, my—" He swallowed hard. "My inadequacies. She turned them into cocktail party entertainment." Lucy's hand found his on the railing, her fingers intertwining with his. "She betrayed your trust. That's on her, not you. And for what it's worth, I don't believe anyone is inadequate. Different, yes. Facing challenges, absolutely, but never inadequate." He turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her heart ache. "How do you do that?" he asked softly. "Do what?" "See past all the walls. Make everything seem possible." Lucy smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "Maybe because I've had to break down a few walls myself. Being a black woman in the art world, especially one trying to bridge the gap between classical art and technology, it hasn't always been easy. But every wall can become a door if you look at it the right way." A cool breeze off the lake made her shiver slightly, and without hesitation, Alanon shrugged off his sweater and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was soft against her skin, carrying his warmth and a hint of his cologne. The gesture was so natural, so unthinking, that it made her throat tight with emotion. "The kids at the gallery," he said after a moment, "they don't see walls, do they? They just see possibilities." "Exactly. That's why I love working with them. They remind me to keep seeing the world that way too." She turned to face him fully, still wrapped in his sweater. "Life has a way of surprising us, don't you think? Tonight I was planning to show you my world, but you ended up showing me something too." "What's that?" "That sometimes the strongest people are the ones who are willing to be vulnerable, to take chances, even when they've been hurt before." Their eyes met, and Lucy felt the world slow down around them. The city sounds faded away, leaving only the gentle lap of waves and the beating of her heart. Allanon's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "Lucy," he whispered, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. The kiss, when it came, was soft and sweet and full of promise. His lips were warm against hers, and she felt him pull her closer, their joined hands pressed between them. Time seemed to stop, the moment stretching into eternity as they stood there under the stars, two souls finding their way to each other. When they finally pulled apart, Lucy saw something new in Allanon's eyes: hope, wonder, and the beginning of healing. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "There's an old saying in the art world," she said softly. "The most beautiful masterpieces often come from putting back together something that was broken. The Japanese call it kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, making it more beautiful for having been broken." Allanon leaned his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the cool night air. "And what if some pieces are missing?" "Then we find new ones," she answered simply. "Or we create something entirely new from what remains. That's what artists do. We see the beauty in transformation." They stayed there by the water for hours, talking, laughing, sharing stories both light and deep. Lucy told him about her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, about the teachers who had encouraged her to pursue both art and technology, about the challenges she'd faced and overcome. Allanon opened up about his family's legacy, the pressure to succeed, and the dreams he'd put aside in pursuit of building his empire. As the night grew later, neither wanted it to end. They walked along the pier, their hands still linked, comfortable silences interspersed with conversation that flowed as naturally as the lake beside them. When they finally reached Lucy's car, Allanon pulled her close for one more kiss, deeper this time, filled with the promise of more to come. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair, "for showing me your world, for seeing past my walls, for everything." Lucy smiled up at him, her heart full. "This is just the beginning," she promised. As she drove home later, still wrapped in his sweater, Lucy thought about transformation. In art, in life, in love. She thought about walls becoming doors, about broken things becoming beautiful, about two different worlds finding harmony together, and she knew, with a certainty that came from somewhere deep in her soul, that something extraordinary was beginning. In his penthouse across the city, Allanon stood at his window, looking out at the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss. For the first time in years, the view didn't feel lonely. Instead, it felt full of possibility, like a blank canvas waiting for the first stroke of paint, like the beginning of a masterpiece waiting to unfold. Chapter 5. Love in Color. The morning sun streamed through the museum's massive windows as Lucy stood before the board of trustees, her presentation materials displayed on the screen behind her. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a tailored burgundy suit that projected both professionalism and artistic flair. The quantum light sculpture, now a permanent installation, pulsed gently in the corner of the room, its patterns reflecting her determined state of mind. "The integration of technology in our exhibits has increased visitor engagement by 40%, she explained, her voice steady despite the skeptical looks from some of the older board members. "But we can do more. With the support of COS Technologies, we have an opportunity to make art accessible to communities that have historically been underserved by traditional museums." "Ms. Grace," interrupted Theodore Wellington III, his bow tie as stiff as his attitude, "while your innovative approaches have brought in a younger crowd, we must maintain the museum's prestigious reputation. These community outreach programs you're proposing are exactly what this institution needs," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Allanon Koss stepped into the room, his presence immediately commanding attention. Forgive my interruption, but as the museum's primary technological partner, I believe I have something to contribute to this discussion. Lucy's heart skipped at his unexpected appearance, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Over the past few weeks, they'd carefully navigated the balance between their growing personal relationship and their professional collaboration. Mr. Koss, Wellington's tone shifted to one of deference. We weren't expecting you. Clearly. Allanon moved to stand near Lucy, not touching her but providing silent support. I've reviewed Ms. Grace's proposals in detail. The combination of cutting-edge technology and community engagement isn't just admirable, it's essential for the museum's future. The quantum computing exhibits have already attracted international attention. Lucy took the opening he provided. And that's just the beginning. Imagine interactive installations in underprivileged schools, virtual reality art programs for hospitalized children, workshops that teach coding through creative expression. We can make this museum a bridge between worlds. She clicked to the next slide, showing images from the Southside Gallery's youth program. Destiny's AI-enhanced artwork featured prominently alongside other student pieces that merged traditional techniques with digital innovation. These young artists represent our future, Lucy continued, her passion evident in every word. They don't see boundaries between art forms or disciplines. They're creating something entirely new, something that could revolutionize how we think about art and technology. The board members leaned forward, caught up in her vision despite themselves. Even Wellington's expression had softened slightly. Lucy pressed her advantage, outlining budgets, timelines, and potential partnerships that would make her dreams reality. After the presentation, as the board filed out discussing the proposals in animated tones, Allanon lingered behind. That was impressive, he said softly, finally allowing himself to move closer to her. Though I'm not sure who they found more persuasive, you or your quantum light sculpture. It was practically dancing during your speech. Lucy laughed, some of her professional tension melting away. I think it responds to emotional intensity, and I certainly had plenty of that going on inside, even if I looked calm on the surface. You looked magnificent, he corrected, helping her gather her materials. Like a warrior artist fighting for her vision. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same folder, sending familiar sparks through Lucy's skin. The quantum sculpture pulsed brighter in response, its patterns shifting to warm, intimate colors. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Besides, his eyes held a mixture of admiration and something deeper. I believe in your vision, Lucy, not just for the museum, but for what art and technology can be together. They walked together through the quiet gallery, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The morning sun painted rainbow patterns through the glass ceiling, creating ever-changing colors on the white walls. Sometimes I wonder, Lucy admitted, pausing before a traditional oil painting, if I'm trying to change too much too fast. The art world can be resistant to new perspectives, especially from someone like me. Allanon turned to face her, his expression serious. You mean a brilliant innovator who sees possibilities others can't imagine? You know what I mean, she said softly. A black woman pushing boundaries in both the tech and art worlds. Wellington isn't the only one who thinks I'm disrupting the natural order of things. Good. Allanon's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Disruption is how we move forward. It's how we break down old barriers and create something better. Look at what you've already accomplished here. He gestured to the quantum sculpture, which had followed their emotional journey with subtle shifts in its patterns. You've created something that speaks to people on a fundamental level, regardless of their background or education. That's not disruption. That's evolution. Lucy leaned into him slightly, drawing strength from his presence. I just want to make sure these opportunities are available to everyone. Art saved my life in so many ways. Technology opened doors I never thought I could walk through. Together, they can do the same for others. And that's exactly why you'll succeed, he murmured into her hair. Your heart is as brilliant as your mind. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the art they both loved, their personal and professional lives intertwining as naturally as the colors above them. The quantum sculpture cast gentle waves of light across their faces, a visual representation of the harmony they'd found together. Later that afternoon, as Lucy worked in her office, a delivery arrived, a small, exquisitely wrapped package. Inside, she found a miniature version of her quantum sculpture, scaled down to desk size, but just as responsive to emotional energy. The note attached read simply, "For when you need a reminder of your own light." She placed the sculpture on her desk, watching as it immediately began to pulse with warm, joyful colors. Like their relationship, it was a perfect blend of art and technology, of passion and innovation, of two different worlds coming together to create something beautiful. The sun continued its journey across the sky, painting the museum in ever-changing colors, while Lucy Grace and Alan Koss wrote their own story in light and shadow, in quantum patterns and heartbeats, in the space where love and creativity merged into something entirely new. Chapter 6. Storms and Shelter. The autumn chill had settled over Chicago when Victoria Blackwood made her calculated return. The charity gala at the Drake Hotel was in full swing, crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow over the city's elite. Lucy stood beside Alan, stunning in a midnight blue gown that seemed to capture starlight when the whispers began rippling through the crowd. Victoria swept into the ballroom like a winter storm, her ice-blonde hair arranged in elaborate waves, her silver dress clearly chosen to draw every eye. 5 years in Europe had only enhanced her sophisticated presence, and she wielded it like a weapon, cutting through the crowd with precision until she stood before them. "Alan," she purred, ignoring Lucy completely. "You're looking well. Success agrees with you." Lucy felt Alan tense beside her, his hand tightening slightly where it rested at the small of her back. She could sense the years of pain and humiliation rising in him like a tide, but before he could respond, she stepped forward with a warm, professional smile. "Miss Blackwood, I believe. I'm Lucy Grace, curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art. Your cousin mentioned you might be returning to Chicago. She's been incredibly supportive of our new technological initiatives." Victoria's perfect smile faltered for just a moment as she was forced to acknowledge Lucy's presence. "Ah, yes, the innovative new exhibits. I heard something about that. Though I must admit, I'm surprised to see Koss Technologies involved in something so experimental." The implied criticism hung in the air, but Lucy remained unruffled. Innovation often requires us to step beyond our comfort zones. Alan's vision for merging technology and art has been revolutionary. But then, you always knew he was capable of extraordinary things, didn't you? The subtle reminder of Victoria's past relationship with Alan and her failure to recognize his potential landed with precision. Victoria's smile turned brittle as she took in their obvious closeness, the protective way Alan stood beside Lucy, the quiet confidence they shared. "Indeed," Victoria's voice could have frozen champagne, "though I'm surprised you have time for artistic pursuits, Alan. Especially given certain limitations we discussed." The cruelty of the reference to his infertility was deliberate, designed to wound. But before the words could fully land, Lucy's laugh rang out, genuine and warm. "Limitations. The only limitation I've seen is in people's imagination. Alan's ability to envision and create the future is exactly why our collaboration has been so successful." She turned to look up at him, her eyes filled with such genuine admiration and love that it acted as a shield against Victoria's poison. The quantum computing exhibit has already inspired dozens of young artists and scientists. We're breaking down barriers between disciplines, between communities. It's extraordinary what can happen when you believe in possibilities instead of limitations. Allenon's eyes never left Lucy's face as he spoke. Everything is possible with the right partner. The words were quiet, but carried clearly to those nearby. Victoria's perfectly manicured hands tightened on her champagne flute. "How inspiring," Victoria managed, her composure cracking slightly. "Though I wonder if the Board of Trustees shares your enthusiasm for all this diversity." The emphasis she placed on the last word made its ugly implications clear. Several nearby conversations stopped as people pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. Lucy's smile never wavered. Actually, they do. Progress isn't just about technology. It's about perspective, about seeing the future clearly instead of clinging to outdated prejudices. She placed her hand on Allenon's arm. "Would you excuse us, Ms. Blackwood? The governor wanted to discuss expanding our educational programs to underserved communities. I'm sure you understand. Duty calls." They moved away smoothly, leaving Victoria standing alone with her rapidly warming champagne. As they crossed the ballroom, Lucy could feel Allenon's tension gradually easing. "I'm sorry," he murmured as they reached a quiet corner. "I should have said something, done something." Lucy turned to face him, reaching up to straighten his bow tie in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "You did do something. You stood beside me, you supported me, and you showed everyone in that room what really matters to you." When she started spreading those rumors about my condition, his voice was rough with emotion. "Look at me," Lucy said firmly, waiting until his eyes met hers. "A man is not measured by his ability to father children, but by the love in his heart and the strength of his character. And you, Allen & Koss, have more of both than anyone I've ever known." The quantum pendant he'd given her, a smaller version of the museum sculpture, pulsed warmly where it rested against her collarbone, responding to the intensity of their connection. Around them the gala continued, but they might as well have been alone in their own world. "How do you do that?" he asked softly, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "Do what?" "Turn darkness into light. Make me feel whole." Lucy leaned into his touch. "Because I see you. Not the masks you wear for the world, not the walls you built for protection, but you. The man who sits for hours with young artists encouraging their dreams, the man who looks at technology and sees poetry, the man I'm falling in love with." The words slipped out naturally, unplanned, but undeniably true. For a moment, time seemed to stop as they stood there, surrounded by Chicago's elite, but lost in each other's eyes. "I love you too," Allen whispered. And then he was kissing her, right there in the middle of the Drake Hotel ballroom, not caring who saw or what they thought. The kiss tasted of champagne and triumph and possibilities. When they finally parted, Lucy saw Victoria stalking toward the exit, her dramatic departure largely ignored by the crowd, who were far more interested in the genuine romance unfolding before them. Later that night, as they walked along the lakefront, Allen told Lucy everything about the private medical reports Victoria had shared, about the cruel rumors she'd spread, about the years of doubt and isolation that followed. "She was wrong," Lucy said simply, squeezing his hand, "about everything, and I'll spend as long as you'll let me proving that to you." The waves lapped gently against the shore as Allen pulled her close. "I think you already have. You make me believe in miracles, Lucy Grace." Above them, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, while below, Two hearts beat in perfect synchronization, their love stronger for having weathered the storm together. Victoria's attempt to resurrect old pain had only served to prove how far Alanon had come, and how much stronger he was with Lucy by his side. The quantum pendant continued to pulse with warm, joyful colors, a visible reminder that love, like light, could not be dimmed by shadows. It could only grow stronger, brighter, more beautiful with each passing day. Chapter 7. Dreams and Whispers. The penthouse was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the city 40 stories below. Moonlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting silver patterns across the bed where Alanon and Lucy lay entwined. Their evening had been perfect, a quiet dinner at home, slow dancing to jazz in the living room, and finally finding their way to each other with kisses that grew increasingly passionate. Now, in the peaceful aftermath of their lovemaking, Lucy watched Alanon's face as he drifted into sleep. The usual tension he carried had melted away, replaced by a serene expression that made him look younger, more vulnerable. Her fingers traced lazy patterns on his chest as she marveled at how natural this felt, how right. The quantum pendant she always wore pulsed with soft, intimate colors, reflecting the depth of her feelings. In the months since Victoria's attempted disruption, their relationship had only grown stronger. They'd created a rhythm together, a dance of work and love, of public success and private joy. As Lucy snuggled closer, Alanon's arms tightened around her instinctively. His breathing was deep and regular, but his eyes moved beneath their lids, suggesting he was dreaming. She pressed a gentle kiss to his shoulder and closed her own eyes, content to drift in this moment of perfect peace. Sometime in the night, she was awakened by a sound, a soft laugh, almost like a child's giggle. Lucy opened her eyes to find Alanon smiling in his sleep, his expression one of pure joy. He murmured something she couldn't quite catch, his hand reaching out as if to touch something precious. "A baby," he whispered clearly, the word filled with wonder. "Our baby." Lucy's heart seemed to stop for a moment, then began racing. She watched as emotions played across his sleeping face, happiness, love, a fierce protectiveness that brought tears to her eyes. This was a side of him she'd glimpsed before in quiet moments, but never so raw and unguarded. The dream seemed to shift, and his expression changed to one of concern. His arms tightened around her again, and he made a small sound of distress. Lucy stroked his face gently, not wanting to wake him, but hoping to ease whatever shadow had crossed his dream. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. We're here." He settled at the sound of her voice, his features softening again. The moon had moved across the sky, casting new patterns through the windows. Lucy remained awake, watching him dream, her mind and heart full of possibilities she'd never dared to voice. When Alanon finally woke, the first light of dawn was painting the sky in delicate pinks and golds. He found Lucy watching him with tears in her eyes and immediately became concerned. "Lucy? What's wrong?" He propped himself up on one elbow, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. She leaned into his touch, smiling through her tears. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. You were dreaming." "I was." He looked confused for a moment, then memory seemed to flood back. A hint of vulnerability crossed his face. "Did I talk in my sleep?" "You did." Lucy's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. "You were dreaming about a baby, our baby." Alanon went very still, but he didn't pull away. His eyes searched her face, looking for any sign of judgment or pity. Instead, he found only love and hope. "I've been having that dream more often lately," he admitted quietly. "Ever since you came into my life. But I didn't want to burden you with my impossible wishes." Lucy sat up, the sheet pooling around her waist as she faced him fully. "Impossible? Who says it's impossible?" "Lucy, You know my condition. I know that medical science advances every day. I know that nothing is truly impossible when there's love and determination behind it. She touched his face, making sure he was really hearing her. And I know that I want to try. With you. For us. The quantum pendant pulsed with intense colors, matching the emotions that passed between them. Allanon's hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. You would want that? Even knowing the challenges, the potential disappointment? I want everything with you, Lucy said simply. The joys and the challenges, the triumphs and the setbacks. And yes, I want to try to create a family with you, whatever form that takes. Allanon pulled her close, burying his face in her neck as emotions overwhelmed him. Lucy held him tightly, her own tears falling freely now. I saw a future in your smile, she whispered, echoing his dream. A beautiful future, full of possibility and love. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were wet, but full of determination. We should talk to Brielle, he said. As both a doctor and our friend, she might have suggestions about specialists, treatment options. Lucy smiled, loving how quickly he moved from emotion to action, always looking for ways to make dreams reality. She's probably already researching it, she admitted. You know how she is, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. They spent the morning in bed, talking about possibilities and fears, hopes and dreams. Sunlight filled the room as they shared their deepest wishes, their most vulnerable desires. The city came alive below them, but they remained in their own world, planning a future neither had dared to imagine before. Later, as they finally rose to face the day, Allanon pulled Lucy into his arms again. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For what? For seeing possibilities instead of limitations, for loving me enough to dream this dream with me. Lucy reached up to kiss him softly. That's what we do, isn't it? We take dreams and make them real, through art, through technology, through love. They showered and dressed, both moving with a new sense of purpose. The morning light caught Lucy's quantum pendant, sending rainbows dancing across the walls. Like their love, it was a perfect blend of science and art, of logic and magic, of dreams made tangible through faith and determination. As they headed out to meet Brielle for brunch, Lucy caught Allanon looking at her with an expression of wonder. What is it? She asked. Just thinking about how one dream can change everything, he replied, taking her hand, and how finding the right person can make every dream seem possible. The city stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility. They stepped into the morning together, ready to begin this new chapter of their journey, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The quantum pendant pulsed with warm, hopeful colors, as if already celebrating the future they were about to create. A future born from a dream whispered in the night, nurtured by love, and made possible by the unwavering belief that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with a simple yes to what others might call impossible. Chapter 8. Tests of Faith. Dr. Brielle Silver's private office at Chicago Memorial Hospital had become their sanctuary over the past few months. The warm wood paneling and soft lighting created a space that felt more like a friend's living room than a medical facility. Today, Lucy sat in one of the comfortable chairs, while Allanon paced by the window, both waiting for Brielle to return with their latest test results. The quantum pendant at Lucy's throat pulsed with anxious colors, matching the tension in the room. She watched Allanon's reflection in the window, noting how his shoulders carried the weight of their journey. 3 months of appointments, tests, and procedures had tested their resolve, but had also brought them closer in ways neither had expected. "You're wearing a path in my carpet," Brielle's warm voice came from the doorway. She entered with her tablet in hand, her white coat pristine, but her expression soft with friendship. "Sorry," Allanon said, moving to sit beside Lucy. Their hands found each other automatically, fingers intertwining. "We're just anxious, worried, ready to climb the walls." Brielle sat across from them, her dark eyes kind. "All normal reactions. But I actually have good news." Lucy felt Alanon's hand tighten on hers as Brielle continued. "The new treatment protocol is showing promising results. Your numbers have improved significantly, Alanon. And Lucy, your hormone levels are optimal. I think we're ready to move forward with the next phase." The relief in the room was palpable. Alanon let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks, while Lucy blinked back happy tears. "However," Brielle held up a finger, her doctor mode fully engaged, "this is just the beginning. The next phase will be more intensive. Daily injections, frequent monitoring, precise timing. It won't be easy." "We're ready," Lucy said firmly, her free hand touching her pendant. "Whatever it takes." Brielle smiled at her oldest friend. "I know you are. But as both your doctor and your friend, I need you both to understand what you're committing to. This will be physically and emotionally demanding. You'll need to lean on each other more than ever." She turned to her tablet, pulling up calendars and treatment schedules. The next hour was spent discussing protocols, medications, and timing. Lucy took careful notes, while Alanon asked detailed questions, his analytical mind processing everything with characteristic thoroughness. "One more thing," Brielle said as they prepared to leave. "I want you both to continue living your lives, keep working on your projects, maintain your routines. This process can become all-consuming if you let it. Don't lose sight of what brought you together in the first place." Later that evening, in their favorite quiet corner of Navy Pier, Lucy and Alanon watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. The lake breeze carried the first hint of spring, promising new beginnings. "Are you sure about this?" Alanon asked softly, his arm around Lucy's shoulders. "It's not too late to—" "Don't you dare," Lucy interrupted, turning to face him. "We're in this together. Every step, every injection, every moment of hope and worry. I've never been more sure of anything." He touched her quantum pendant, watching it pulse with the strength of her conviction. I never thought I'd find someone willing to go through all this. Someone who believes in possibilities the way you do." Lucy reached up to trace his face with gentle fingers. "Do you remember what you told me when we first started working together about quantum computing? That it's about exploring all possible states simultaneously. Multiple realities existing in parallel until observation collapses them into a single outcome," Lucy finished. "Well, I'm observing us, Alanon Koss. I'm choosing the reality where we face this together and come out stronger, where we create something beautiful from love and science and sheer determination." He pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion he couldn't put into words. The quantum pendant flared brightly between them, catching the last rays of sunset. The next weeks fell into a new rhythm. Early morning appointments at the hospital, where Brielle monitored their progress with professional precision and friendly encouragement. Evening injection sessions that Lucy turned into intimate rituals of care and connection. Late nights when they would talk about their hopes and fears, drawing strength from each other. Through it all, they followed Brielle's advice about maintaining their normal lives. Lucy continued her work at the museum, overseeing the expansion of their technological art programs. Alanon drove innovation at Koss Technologies, while secretly designing a new quantum-based installation for the children's wing of the hospital. One particularly challenging evening, after a disappointing test result, they found themselves in Lucy's studio at the South Side Gallery. She had started painting again, something she hadn't done in years, creating abstract works that captured their emotional journey. "This one speaks to me," Alanon said, studying a canvas dominated by swirling blues and golds. "It feels like hope." Lucy stepped into his arms, paint-stained fingers leaving colorful prints on his shirt. It's us. All the possibilities, all the dreams, all the love wrapped up together. He held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of paint and her perfume. I never thought I could feel this way, he admitted. Even with all the uncertainty, I've never been happier. That's because uncertainty isn't always a bad thing, Lucy said, leading him to the window where they could see the city lights coming on. It means anything is possible. Like quantum states before they collapse, all outcomes exist until we manifest one through our choices and actions. The next morning brought another round of tests, another set of numbers to analyze, another step on their journey. But as they sat in Brielle's office, hands clasped and hearts aligned, they were no longer just patient and doctor. They were three friends, united in purpose, each bringing their own strength to the challenge. Your resilience amazes me, Brielle said, reviewing their latest results. Both the medical numbers and the emotional fortitude you're showing. This isn't just about science anymore. You're rewriting the story of what's possible. Lucy smiled, feeling Alanon's thumb trace gentle circles on her palm. That's what artists do, isn't it? We take what exists and transform it into something new, whether it's paint on canvas or quantum algorithms or the creation of life itself. The quantum pendant pulsed with warm, steady colors, a visible reminder of their unwavering faith in each other and in the future they were working to create. Outside Brielle's window, spring was fully awakening, bringing new life to the city. It felt like an omen, a promise of the possibilities that lay ahead. As they left the hospital that day, stepping into the bright sunshine, Alanon pulled Lucy close for a kiss that tasted of hope and determination. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For what?" "For choosing our reality, for seeing the beauty in the uncertainty, for making me believe in miracles." The quantum pendant glowed between them, its colors merging and dancing like their shared dreams. They walked hand in hand through the hospital gardens, where early flowers were pushing through the soil, defying winter's memory with their persistent growth. Like those flowers, their love had grown stronger through adversity, putting down deep roots and reaching always toward the light. Each test, each procedure, each moment of waiting had only strengthened their bond, proving that the greatest miracles often come disguised as challenges. And so they continued their journey, supported by Brielle's expertise and friendship, sustained by their love for each other, and guided by the unwavering belief that sometimes the most beautiful stories are written not in spite of obstacles, but because of them. Chapter 9. Miracle in Motion. The rain tapped gently against the windows of their penthouse on that transformative Tuesday morning. Lucy sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the third pregnancy test she'd taken, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. The quantum pendant at her throat pulsed with colors she'd never seen before, soft pinks and golds that seemed to dance with joy. Alanon was in Tokyo for an important business meeting, and the time difference meant he'd be in the middle of negotiations right now. They'd agreed she would wait to take the test until he returned tomorrow, but something had woken her early this morning, a feeling, an intuition, a whisper of possibility. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, then hesitated. This news was too important for a text or call. After everything they'd been through, he deserved to hear it in person, to share this moment fully. But as she stared at the positive test, her heart racing with excitement and fear, she knew she couldn't wait. The quantum pendant flared brightly as she made her decision. One quick call to Madison, and everything was arranged. By noon, she was stepping off the COS Technologies private jet in Tokyo. Her small overnight bag, containing 3 positive pregnancy tests, carefully wrapped in tissue paper. The Tokyo skyline glittered in the evening light as her car wound through the city streets. Lucy's hand kept straying to her stomach, still flat, but now holding their miracle. The quantum pendant's colors shifted and swirled, reflecting her mix of emotions, joy, anxiety, overwhelming love. She arrived at the Grand Hyatt just as Allanon's meeting was scheduled to end. Madison had arranged everything perfectly, giving her access to his private suite. Lucy's heart pounded as she heard his keycard in the door. Allanon entered, loosening his tie, his face showing the strain of complex negotiations. Then he saw her, and everything else fell away. "Lucy?" His voice was rough with emotion. "What's wrong? Are you—" She crossed the room to him, tears streaming down her face, even as she smiled. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. So incredibly, beautifully right." Understanding dawned in his eyes as she pulled the tissue-wrapped tests from her bag. His hand shook as he unwrapped them, staring at the 3 positive indicators as if they might disappear. Are we... He couldn't seem to form complete sentences. Lucy took his face in her hands, her quantum pendant pulsing with pure joy. "We're pregnant, Allanon. It worked. Our miracle happened." He pulled her into his arms with a sound that was half laugh, half sob. They sank to their knees together, holding each other as years of hope and months of struggle culminated in this perfect moment. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow," Lucy whispered against his neck. "I needed to see your face when you found out. I needed to share this moment with you, exactly like this." Allanon drew back just enough to kiss her, pouring all his love and joy into the connection. When they finally parted, he pressed his forehead to hers, one hand moving to rest protectively over her stomach. "A baby," he breathed, echoing his dream from months ago. "Our baby." The next hours were a blur of happy tears, excited phone calls to Brielle, and plans hastily rearranged. Allanon's business partners were understanding when he explained he needed to return to Chicago immediately for urgent personal matters. They rescheduled the remaining meetings without hesitation, perhaps sensing the barely contained joy radiating from him. On the flight home, Lucy curled up against him in the luxury of the private jet, both of them unable to stop smiling. They talked about everything and nothing: nursery colors, baby names, how to tell their families. The quantum pendant created a light show of beautiful colors, matching their mood of celebration and wonder. But their joy was tested 2 weeks later when the first complications arose. Lucy woke one morning with concerning symptoms, and they rushed to the hospital where Brielle was waiting. The hours of tests and monitoring were some of the longest of their lives. "The next few months will be critical," Brielle explained, reviewing the ultrasound results. "Lucy, you'll need to reduce your workload, minimize stress, and follow a strict care regimen. But," she smiled, pointing to the screen, "look at this." They stared at the ultrasound image where multiple tiny heartbeats flickered like stars. Allanon's grip on Lucy's hand tightened as Brielle continued, "You're carrying triplets. 3 healthy embryos, all developing normally. This explains the elevated hormone levels and increased morning sickness." "3," Lucy whispered, her free hand going to her stomach in wonder. "3 miracles." Allanon's voice was thick with emotion. "After being told we might never have one," Brielle's expression softened as she watched her friends absorb the news. "This will make the pregnancy more challenging. You'll need extra monitoring, extra care, extra everything. But if anyone can handle this, it's you two." The following months became a beautiful dance of adaptation and care. Allanon transformed their penthouse into a sanctuary of comfort, installing automated systems to maintain perfect temperature and humidity. The quantum pendant's colors became a sort of emotional barometer, helping them monitor Lucy's well-being. Lucy continued her work at the museum remotely, using virtual reality to oversee installations and mentor her students. The South Side Gallery teenagers were especially excited, already planning art projects for the babies. Destiny, now heading to college on a full scholarship, designed a stunning digital mural for the nursery that responded to sound and movement. Their evening routine became sacred time. Al-Anon would read scientific journals to Lucy's growing belly, explaining quantum mechanics and technological innovations to their unborn children. Lucy would sing or tell stories about art and creativity, the quantum pendant creating beautiful light patterns that seemed to dance with her words. "They can hear us, you know," she said one night as they lay in bed, Al-Anon's hand spread protectively over her stomach. "They respond to our voices, to the quantum light patterns, to everything." As if to prove her point, there was a flutter of movement under his palm. Al-Anon's face lit up with wonder. No matter how many times he felt them move, each kick and turn was a miracle to him. "I never dreamed this was possible," he admitted softly. 3 perfect lives, growing stronger every day. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover it was all a beautiful dream." Lucy covered his hand with hers, the quantum pendant pulsing with steady, reassuring colors. "This is real, my love. Every moment, every challenge, every triumph, we're writing our own story, defying the odds with love and science and pure determination." The babies moved again, as if agreeing with their mother. Al-Anon leaned down to kiss her rounded belly, whispering promises of love and protection to their children. Lucy ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full of love it felt like it might burst. Outside their window, Chicago glittered in the night, a constellation of earthbound stars. Inside, in their private universe of love and wonder, 3 tiny hearts beat in harmony with their parents' dreams. The quantum pendant's light bathed them in warm, protective colors, a tangible reminder that sometimes the greatest miracles come to those who dare to believe in possibilities. They fell asleep like that, connected by touch and love and shared dreams, while their triplets danced their secret. Midnight ballet beneath Lucy's heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of faith, but for now they rested in the certainty that love had created not just 1 miracle, but 3. Chapter 10. Love Multiplied. The private wing of Chicago Memorial Hospital hummed with quiet anticipation in the pre-dawn hours. Lucy lay in the specially prepared delivery suite, her quantum pendant pulsing with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. At 34 weeks, their triplets had decided it was time to make their appearance. Al-Anon hadn't left her side since her water broke 18 hours ago, his normally composed demeanor replaced by barely contained nervous energy. He alternated between holding her hand, adjusting her pillows, and consulting with the team of specialists Brielle had assembled. "Remember to breathe," Brielle instructed, checking the monitors surrounding Lucy's bed. She'd insisted on being present for the delivery, both as their doctor and their friend. "The baby's heart rates are strong and steady. Everything's progressing exactly as it should." Lucy nodded, focusing on her breathing as another contraction built. The quantum pendant's colors shifted to deep blues and purples, matching the intensity of the moment. Al-Anon wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring words of encouragement. "You're amazing," he whispered. "So strong, so beautiful." The contraction peaked, and Lucy squeezed his hand hard enough to make him wince. When it passed, she managed a smile. "Sorry about your hand." "I've got another one," he joked, making her laugh despite her exhaustion. This was what had carried them through the challenging pregnancy, their ability to find light moments, even in intensity, to face everything together with love and humor. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical activity. The delivery team moved with practiced efficiency, responding to Brielle's quiet commands. Lucy's world narrowed to the rhythm of contractions, Al-Anon's steady presence, and the persistent strength of their baby's heartbeats on the monitor. "It's time," Brielle announced finally, her professional demeanor tinged with evident emotion. "Lucy, you're fully dilated. On the next contraction, I need you to push." The quantum pendant flared brilliantly as Lucy gathered her strength. Allanon supported her back, his free hand still clasped in hers. "You can do this, my love," he breathed. "We're almost there." The delivery suite erupted in focused activity as the first baby made their appearance. "It's a boy," Brielle announced, her voice thick with joy. The sound of a strong cry filled the room, and Lucy sobbed in relief. "One down, 2 to go," Brielle encouraged. "You're doing beautifully, Lucy. Rest for a moment, then we'll meet your second little miracle." Allanon kissed Lucy's temple, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. The quantum pendant pulsed with pure golden light as their second son arrived just minutes later, his cry joining his brother's in a perfect duet. The third baby, another boy, took his time, keeping them in suspense for several more minutes of intense pushing. When he finally arrived, his cry was the strongest of all, as if announcing his presence to the world with particular enthusiasm. 3 perfect, healthy boys, Brielle declared, her own eyes wet with happy tears, all with excellent APGAR scores, despite being a few weeks early. The medical team worked efficiently to clean and examine the babies while completing Lucy's post-delivery care. Allanon moved between his wife and his sons, his expression one of absolute wonder. The quantum pendant created a gentle light show, its colors soft and welcoming for the newborns. Finally, all 3 babies were cleaned, swaddled, and returned to their parents. Lucy held 2, while Allanon cradled the third, both of them overwhelmed by the perfection of the moment. "They're beautiful," Allanon whispered, gently touching each tiny face. "They have your nose, Lucy, and your strength." "And your determination," she replied softly. "Look how alert they are, taking everything in. They're going to be brilliant, just like their father." Brielle approached with their birth certificates, ready to make everything official. "Have you decided on names?" Lucy and Allanon exchanged a look filled with love and certainty. They'd spent months discussing names, wanting each child to have their own unique identity while honoring their shared heritage. "Marcus Anthony Koss," Lucy said, looking at their firstborn, whose serious expression already reminded her of Allanon in board meetings. "Julian Thomas Koss," Allanon added, watching their second son yawn delicately. "And Xavier James Koss," they finished together, smiling at their youngest, who was already showing signs of being the most energetic. As Brielle recorded the names, the new family shared a moment of perfect peace. The quantum pendant's light bathed them all in warm, protective colors, creating a cocoon of love around their expanded family. The sun was rising over Chicago, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and promise. Allanon carefully settled into the bed beside Lucy, still holding Xavier while she cradled Marcus and Julian. The babies dozed peacefully, secure in their parents' arms. "I never imagined this kind of happiness was possible," Allanon murmured, his voice rough with emotion. 3 perfect miracles, and the most incredible woman in the world to share them with. Lucy leaned against him, exhausted but radiant. "We did it together. Just like everything else, art and science, love and determination, all coming together to create something beautiful." The quantum pendant's light seemed to embrace them all, its colors reflecting the pure joy of the moment. Outside, the city was waking up to a new day, unaware that 3 tiny miracles had just made their entrance into the world, defying all odds through the power of love and unwavering faith. Brielle watched from the doorway, her heart full as she observed her friends in their moment of triumph. As both a doctor and a friend, she had witnessed their entire journey, from those first tentative steps toward hope, through all the challenges and uncertainties, to this perfect morning of fulfilled dreams. The triplets would stay in the hospital for a few weeks, growing stronger under the careful supervision of the medical team. But for now, in these precious first hours, they were exactly where they needed to be. Surrounded by their parents' love, bathed in quantum light, and already beginning to write their own unique stories in the world. Love had multiplied beyond all expectation, turning what some had called impossible into a reality more beautiful than any dream. 3 tiny heartbeats joined the symphony of their family, each one a testament to the power of believing in miracles, in possibilities, and in the transformative power of love. Chapter 11. Family Bonds. Time seemed to flow differently in the Coe's household since the arrival of the triplets. Days melted into nights and back again, marked by feedings, diaper changes, and moments of pure magic. The penthouse had transformed from a showcase of modern design into a warm family home, where the sound of baby giggles echoed off the glass walls and tiny fingerprints decorated every surface. Lucy sat in the nursery's bay window, Marcus cradled against her chest, while Julian and Xavier played on their activity mat nearby. The quantum pendant cast soft, soothing colors across the room, creating patterns that never failed to captivate the babies. At 6 months old, each boy's personality was already shining through. Marcus, their firstborn by 7 minutes, was thoughtful and observant. He would watch everything with intense focus, his dark eyes taking in every detail. Julian, the middle child, was their dreamer, often lost in his own world of wonder. And Xavier, their youngest by 12 minutes, was perpetual motion and sunshine, always ready with a smile. The nursery itself was a testament to the blend of art and technology that had brought their family together. Destiny's digital mural responded to the baby's movements and sounds, creating an ever-changing landscape of gentle colors and shapes. The quantum-based mobile above their cribs, designed by Alanon, played with light and shadow in ways that soothed the boys to sleep. "I thought I'd find you all here." Alanon's voice came from the doorway. He'd just returned from a board meeting, his tie already loosened as he moved to join his family. Xavier immediately rolled toward his father's voice, while Julian reached up with grabby hands. "Daddy's home," Lucy smiled, watching as Alanon scooped up their younger sons. "How was the meeting?" "Productive. We're expanding the Quantum Computing Education Initiative to more schools." He settled beside her on the window seat, Xavier and Julian contentedly snuggling into his chest. "But I couldn't wait to get home to my favorite people." The quantum pendant pulsed warmly as Lucy leaned over to kiss him, careful not to disturb Marcus, who was finally drifting off to sleep. These quiet moments as a family were precious, especially now that they were both back to work, albeit with modified schedules that allowed them to prioritize their sons. "Aunt Bree is coming over later," Lucy mentioned, referring to Brielle's weekly visits. Their friend had become an honorary aunt to the triplets, bringing not just medical expertise, but also an endless supply of stories and love. "She's bringing some new books for story time." "Speaking of stories," Alanon smiled, "have you seen the latest art from the Southside Gallery kids? They've created an entire series inspired by our boys." The teenagers at the gallery had adopted the triplets as their collective muses, creating everything from traditional portraits to interactive digital installations that captured the essence of their unique personalities. The latest exhibition, titled 3 Miracles, had drawn record crowds. "They're amazing," Lucy agreed, carefully transferring the sleeping Marcus to his crib. "Destiny called yesterday. She's incorporating quantum algorithms into her latest piece, something about capturing the mathematical poetry of genetic inheritance." Alanon chuckled softly, remembering the bright-eyed girl who had first shown him her AI art experiments. "She's going to revolutionize the art world someday. All of them are." He looked down at Julian and Xavier, who were playing with his tie. Just like these three will change the world in their own ways. Lucy sat back down beside him, snuggling into his side as they watched their sons. The quantum pendant created a dance of colors that made the babies laugh in delight. Each day brought new discoveries, new moments of joy, new reasons to be grateful for the miracle of their family. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. "From that first meeting at the museum to here." "Every day," Alanon replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me more than I ever dreamed possible, Lucy. Not just our boys, but a whole new way of seeing the world, of seeing myself." They sat together in comfortable silence, broken only by the happy babbles of their sons and the gentle hum of the city below. The afternoon sun painted patterns across the nursery floor, mixing with the quantum light to create new colors that seemed to exist just for them. Later, when Brielle arrived with an armful of books and her usual infectious enthusiasm, she found them all in the living room. The boys were fascinated by a new interactive art piece Lucy had installed, a wall of light that responded to their movements with bursts of color and gentle musical notes. "There are my favorite scientists in training," Brielle announced, setting down her bags to accept enthusiastic hugs from the babies. Despite their young age, the triplets already recognized and adored their aunt. "Scientists?" Lucy raised an eyebrow. "I thought they were going to be artists. Why not both?" Alanon suggested, watching as Xavier attempted to catch a beam of light. "They're already breaking down barriers between art and science just by being themselves." The evening unfolded in its usual pattern of stories, playtime, and the carefully choreographed bedtime routine they'd perfected over the months. Brielle stayed for dinner, filling them in on hospital gossip and the latest developments in medical research. "You know," she said, watching Lucy and Alanon work in perfect sync to feed and clean up after the babies, "you two have created something extraordinary here. And I don't just mean the boys." "What do you mean?" Lucy asked, wiping pureed carrots from Julian's chin. "This," Brielle gestured to encompass the whole scene. "The way you've merged your worlds so completely, art and science, emotion and logic, professional success and personal joy. You're showing these boys that anything is possible when you believe in love and possibilities." The quantum pendant's colors deepened, reflecting the truth of her words. Lucy and Alanon exchanged a look, filled with understanding and gratitude. Their journey had been more than just about creating a family. It had been about breaking down walls, challenging assumptions, and proving that love could transform even the most impossible dreams into reality. As night fell over Chicago, the Koss family settled into their evening routine. 3 tiny boys dreaming peacefully in their quantum-lit nursery. 2 parents, still as deeply in love as ever, watching over their miracles. And 1 quantum pendant, pulsing with the steady rhythm of a family bonded by love, science, and the unwavering belief in possibilities. Chapter 12. Full Circle. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle against the darkening sky, the Museum of Contemporary Art buzzed with anticipation. The charity gala was in full swing, but this time it wasn't just another social event. Tonight was about sharing their miracle with the world. Lucy stood at the podium, radiant in a deep purple gown that complemented her glowing skin. The quantum pendant at her throat created a gentle aurora of colors that seemed to dance with her emotions. Alanon stood beside her, holding Xavier, while Marcus and Julian sat contentedly in their special seats near the stage, fascinated by the light show above them. "Tonight," Lucy's voice carried across the hushed room, "we're here to celebrate more than art or technology. We're here to celebrate possibility." She glanced at her family, her heart full of love. They said it couldn't be done. Merging classical art with quantum computing, breaking down barriers between communities, creating life where science said it was impossible. But love doesn't listen to limitations. The quantum light sculpture behind them responded to her words, creating patterns of unprecedented beauty. The installation now incorporated elements of their entire journey: the colors of their first meeting, the patterns of their son's heartbeats, the very essence of their love story, written in light and shadow. What began as a professional collaboration has blossomed into something extraordinary, Allanan continued, his free hand finding Lucy's. Our quantum computing innovations have revolutionized both art and medicine, but our greatest masterpiece stands before you today, a family born of love, science, and unwavering faith in possibilities. In the front row, Brielle wiped away tears as she watched her friends share their story. The triplets, though too young to understand the significance of the moment, seemed to sense its importance. Even energetic Xavier was calm in his father's arms, his tiny hand reaching for the quantum lights that had been part of his life since before birth. The audience sat spellbound as Lucy and Allanan revealed their newest initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping other couples facing fertility challenges, combining cutting-edge medical research with holistic support programs. The quantum technology that had monitored their pregnancy would now help countless others on their own journeys to parenthood. But this is more than a medical program, Lucy explained, her voice rich with emotion. It's about hope, about seeing beyond limitations, about believing that love can transform the impossible into reality. As if on cue, Julian reached for his mother from his seat. Lucy lifted him easily, balancing him on her hip as she continued speaking. Marcus raised his arms to Allanan, wanting to join his family too. Soon, all three boys were on stage with their parents, creating a picture of joy that moved many in the audience to tears. The quantum pendant's light embraced them all, creating a nimbus of color that seemed to symbolize their unity. Here was living proof that miracles existed, not just in the birth of three healthy boys to parents who were told they could never have children, but in the way love had transformed two separate lives into something greater than the sum of its parts. "Look at them," Victoria Blackwood's cousin whispered to her companion. "Who would have thought the defective heir would end up with such a perfect family?" Victoria, who had slipped into the back of the room unnoticed, felt something shift in her heart as she watched the scene unfold. The bitterness she'd carried for so long began to dissolve in the face of such genuine love and joy. Without a word, she turned and left, finally releasing her hold on the past. On stage, Allanan gazed at his family with wonder. Lucy's eyes met his, and in that moment they shared a wordless understanding of how far they'd come. From that first meeting in this very museum to now, their journey had been one of constant growth, unwavering faith, and deepening love. They say quantum physics teaches us that multiple realities exist simultaneously. Allanan addressed the crowd, his voice thick with emotion. But standing here tonight, I know with absolute certainty that we're living in the most beautiful reality possible. Because in this reality, I found the courage to believe in love again. In this reality, I met a woman who saw past my walls and into my heart. In this reality, we created three miracles who remind us every day that anything is possible when you believe. Lucy squeezed his hand as their sons cuddled closer, creating a perfect tableau of family love. The quantum lights above them erupted in a display of unprecedented beauty, as if celebrating the triumph of love over doubt, of hope over fear, of possibility over limitation. The audience rose in a standing ovation, but Lucy and Allanan barely noticed. In that moment, their world had narrowed to just this: their family, their love, their shared dream made reality. The quantum pendant pulsed with pure joy, its light merging with the larger installation to create patterns that would never be exactly replicated, yet would be remembered forever. As the applause washed over them, Lucy and Alanon shared a kiss that tasted of triumph and promise, while their three miracle boys giggled and reached for the dancing lights above. In that perfect moment, they were both beginning and completion, both journey and destination, both question and answer. They had proven that love could rewrite the rules of possibility, that faith could move mountains of doubt, and that the greatest masterpieces were painted not with brushes or algorithms, but with the colors of the heart. Their story, written in quantum light and baby laughter, in shared dreams and unwavering belief, would go on to inspire countless others to believe in their own miracles. For in the end, their greatest creation wasn't the quantum technology that had revolutionized art and medicine, or even the three beautiful boys who filled their lives with joy. It was the love they shared, a love that had defied odds, broken barriers, and proven that sometimes the most scientific truth of all is that the heart knows no limitations when it dares to believe in possibilities. Stop! Before you go any further, how will you find me in this huge world of fake channels? You might think they are Mr. Peter, but they are just using Al to clone my voice. Don't be fooled. Subscribe to my official channel and become part of this beautiful family. Let's stay together and keep the real stories alive.